So we have 3 people in the audience now.
No, we have more.
And one of them is Richard.
They are a little bit shy. They are in the back of the room.
Eu vou quebrar o protocolo um pouquinho e pedir, pessoal, os palestrantes que estão internacionais queriam ver vocês. Então, se vocês puderem sentar mais pertinho aqui, seria ótimo, porque daí eles enxergam vocês. A gente já vai começar 1 minutinho.
I have to go.
You have to go where?
Para eles verem a energia de vocês. Boa. Eles estão observando lá. É. Não tem problema. Quebrei o protocolo para trazer o pessoal. Pode ir. Boa tarde, gente. Tá dando um eco? Deu. Eu sou a Carolina Cavalheiro, aqui do Caldeira. Sou responsável pelo time de comunidade e mercado, então alguns de vocês já me conhecem bem. Vou fazer uma breve introdução, contextualizar um pouquinho vocês e já chamo as estrelas da tarde aqui. Muitos de vocês já devem saber também, essa semana é super especial para a gente, porque comemora 1 ano desde que o Caldeira, de fato, abriu as portas, em 26 de março do ano passado. Então, essa semana inteira, a gente está com eventos de manhã, de tarde, de noite, conteúdo, happy hour. Tem muita coisa legal acontecendo. Então, caso vocês só estejam sabendo desse evento específico aqui, depois deem uma olhada no resto da programação, que tem muita coisa muito legal acontecendo. E obrigada mesmo pela participação de vocês. A gente fica muito feliz e emocionados, de fato, de ver isso aqui acontecendo. Eu vou agradecer os patrocinadores que viabilizaram essa semana de acontecer, toda essa infraestrutura e os conteúdos que a gente está trazendo também. O patrocínio master é do Banrisul, que inclusive essa semana também inaugurou o espaço de inovação aqui dentro do Instituto. Então, ali perto da área de coworking, se vocês passarem por lá, ficou super legal a sede. E a gente fica super feliz de ter eles aqui conosco. Os apoiadores estratégicos da Amazon Web Services, o Banco Topázio e o Sebrae X, que é a marca de inovação do Sebrae. Então, muito, muito obrigada pelo apoio dos patrocinadores. Agradecer também o pessoal do Mercado Brasco, que tem um café incrível aqui dentro. Quem não passou lá ainda, o Café Brasco é maravilhoso. E hoje, especialmente, vai ter um coffee no final do evento ali. Então, vocês podem ficar para aproveitar. é um apoio deles. E esse evento vai ser em inglês. Então, a gente está com os radinhos de tradução ali do lado da porta. Quem quiser pegar, agora é a hora, porque a partir do momento que eu passar o microfone, a gente vai mudar o idioma para inglês, para a gente continuar a programação. E um último recadinho, durante essa semana, como a gente está com muitos eventos e a gente quer que vocês participem do máximo possível dos eventos, a gente está com um dos primeiros eventos, na verdade, no Rio Grande do Sul, que a gente está com uma ativação de NFTs. Então, ao final de cada palestra, cada conteúdo que a gente tem, rola um QR Code no telão, que vocês podem escanear e colecionar essas NFTs. Ao final de dessa semana, dependendo do número de NFTs que vocês tiverem, a gente tem alguns brindes e prêmios para dar. Caso vocês tenham algum problema para coletar, alguma dúvida, vocês podem procurar a gente que está com a camisetinha aqui da Semana Caldeira para tirar dúvidas, para dar algum apoio técnico, mas seria super legal contar com a parceria de vocês e participação nessa ação. É isso, gente. Então, muito obrigada de novo pela presença de todos. Bem-vindos. Vou chamar o Edson aqui no palco para dar início ao nosso conteúdo.
Hi. Okay. Good afternoon. I will try to speak my English. I'm working. Hi. I am doing generative leadership in Spanish. So it's crazy this for me, okay? So I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad to my fathers and my ancestors to be here. And I am glad to your ancestors, everybody that did the best to you came here. So this is so much important to see this, how we arrive here. So let's tell you what will happen today. It's the first time that I have to share something like a host join Bob Dunhan and Maribell González. So I didn't bring any image, and just I will tell you what I'm understanding. Usually I speak what I did, even right, success, even wrong, because my title, Chief of Mistake Officer, is like I love this. To innovate, you need to have a conversation with the mistake. So I would like to share you what I'm doing now. Is not I did. So this is a movement. This is an invitation to come together to this movement. And I will tell you what I'm understanding, what I understood about this. Conversation for commitment to action to result. This is simple and complex. So what you will see here. And what I feel in this space, nice space, is the furnace is like a conversation. The boiler is people. Furnace, people, steam is commitment. And turbine, action 1, and generator, action 2, for result, that is energy. And what they did there, Mr. Renner, here is to get energy for prosperity. They did a lot of things about social. People first, after the industry. They have a nursery, have a CLT. I don't know how I can speak it to Bob, but is a CLT is an innovator for people. So we are in this space. And the question that I ask me, what is the energy and the care about this energy for Instituto Caldeira that we are doing here? Because it's magic, this space that mean what we are together here. So this, and now I will invite you to listen Maribell, that is the CEO of Latin America, that I speak in Spanish, and Bob Dunhan, that is founder, and I'm happy to share this with you guys. Thank you.
Hi. I'm not sure if you can hear me well. Can you hear me well? Yeah? Okay. I think we have, maybe we have a delay. But for me and for Bob, it's a great pleasure to be here with all of you. We would love to be with you there, celebrating in this week or during this with all of you. For us, it's a pleasure to be invited, and we are really happy to be invited to be with you, even when we are in a distance. Bob from New York and me from California. But it's an amazing possibility for us to have this globality and this capacity to be anywhere and be global. Following Edson conversation, I think for us it's really important to be in the bright side of the world. And to be in difficult moments for a lot of people in this moment. But for us, it's important that generative leadership and innovation and all the conversations that you are having there in the Institute during every day are the conversations that can help us to go and create a world where everybody can thrive, as the Institute Care says. For me, it's also important that we can be here talking in English or in Spanish or in Portuguese in this event, because as a CEO of the generative leadership in Latin America, it's really important to let the world know that we are all one. For many years and centuries, it has been the Spanish speakers in Latin America and Portuguese speakers in Latin America and English speakers in Latin America. But what we are trying to do, thanks to Martika, who is there with you, and maybe Martika can say hi to all of you, is that we can create just one continent. Now, with Bob in the United States, with America speaking in Spanish, with you speaking in Portuguese, but we all creating a great continent. My care, as well as the care of Bob, which is that everybody thrives, for me is especially in Latin America. For many years, I learned that Latin America is a third world country, and I really disagree with that sentence. I think that we Latinos, when we are centered, when we are focused, when we are disciplined, we can be a first world country, a first world continent. So that's what we want, and that's what we create, bringing technologies, discourses, and narratives of the generative leadership, bringing all this discipline and bring all these distinctions that you will have with Bob today. But also connect that with our intentions, with our heart, and with all the love that we can have as the Latino people, and creating a better world for us and for the world. Because if we are the heart, that's what the world needs in this moment from us. I want also to introduce Bob, and I want him. I want to introduce him not as this really great guy who knows about leadership and has a lot of experience and have been, like leading in a lot of different places in the world, and all accompany leaders and companies creating better places to work in productivity and also in well-being. But I want to introduce him as my mentor, as my partner in business, as my friend, and as a person who you will love, not just through the camera, but in every moment that you can have an experience with him, because that is leadership. And for me, he is the embodiment of leadership. Since the first moment when I met him, I knew that he can teach me everything that he knows, because that is his promise and because that's what we do. So no, I don't want to take more time from you with him. So I will let you with Bob Dunhan, the founder and the CEO of the Institute of Generative Leadership. Bob?
Beautiful, Maribell. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. And when COVID came, I had to learn to do virtual engagements. And now we're in front of a live audience again. This is like having to learn all over again. So thank you to the Institute, Caldera, for inviting me. I know you are in the commitment of innovation. And innovation is a subject dear to my heart. I am a co-author of a book called The Innovator's Way, which I wrote with Dr. Peter Denning, published in 2010. And we spent 7 years exploring what is fundamental to effective innovation. And it turned out that what it revealed to us is that it shares a foundation of what effective innovation is with leadership. You see, we go all the way down in both our approach to leadership and to innovation to the human being. There's so many approaches that are intellectual, conceptual, external, and they have some use. But what's really fundamental to both leadership and innovation is that human beings are creating the future. When there are people who try to lead that journey with others, we call them leaders. And when we are trying to create a new future to journey to, we call that innovation. But innovation needs leadership. And leaders are called to innovation, because we cannot create the future if all we do is repeat the past. So I want to share with you some key perspectives. I'm going to start with leadership and talking about generative leadership. And the word generative refers to the human being, because as human beings, we are always generating. We're generating ourselves. We're generating our connection with others or disconnection. We're generating the future, and it has value or it does not. And so when we see how human beings create the future together and take action to make it happen, that's where we're going to see how leadership and innovation intersect. So I'm going to share some images with you to help with this journey. So first of all, I really want to feel connected. So I'm going to wave at you. I want you to wave back. I want you to see if we can connect here for this conversation. And I'm going to next challenge you with a very important leadership skill, a very important leadership practice. Let's see if you can pass the test. Take a deep breath and relax on the exhale. In our decades of working with leadership, this may be the most important practice of leadership that you will encounter, because it's not about breathing. It's about letting go of all the chatter, letting go of all the tension, and actually becoming present. We cannot act effectively as leaders or human beings creating the future if we can't be present to what's going on in this moment. So let me share, and let's begin our journey. And so in generative leadership, we hold that it is part of the journey of life. And while that may seem obvious when I say it, there's a lot of leadership discussion where you never seem to have the story of the leader or the people they're leading in their lives. And we have found in our decades of work here that we need to understand leadership as a journey of life. A leadership journey is part of the life journey. And when we see how we experience that as human beings in this journey, as a human being, we are always here, going there. For some people, there in the future looks like yesterday. But for leaders and for innovators, we're trying to create that new future where we go from the past, and we want the past to educate us, to give us a place to step forward from, not to constrain us. We take action and we produce results. And so this is the path of leadership and innovation. Now, in our work over the last 4 decades, we have seen enough development in our understanding of leadership and coaching of leaders that we consider these to be fields that are professions. That, like other professions, they have depth, they have a call to skill, and it takes time to develop the skill. And professions are based on the promise of value that you bring to the world. So let me show you from this approach of how we need to think about what we have learned, how we need to think about and understand leadership. And first of all, in our culture, it's a blind spot. Our experience of leadership with leaders is that they are surrounded by blind spots, that they are surrounded by what they don't see. And I recall in my own personal leadership journey, I began where I was aware I was entering leadership way back in the 1980s in Silicon Valley. And I was working in a company that was in a death spiral. It was not succeeding. People were leaving the company, and I had a new vice president arrive who invited me to stay to help with a turnaround. And I had a sleepless night, but I decided I was gonna go for it. And he put me in charge of all the software engineers in the company and all the software products, 35 products, 250 engineers. And I'd never done this before. And so I had to innovate in my own learning, but I also had to innovate for the company because this organization had not been able to get a product out the door. And this began my journey. I inquired, where do I go to learn how to do this job? And no one could help me. The executives couldn't help me. The MBAs couldn't help me. The advice I got was good luck. And finally, I was searching. I ran into a workshop that was about communication for action. And this resonated for me because I knew that my company had communication problems and certainly action problems. And in that encounter, I was asked a question that put me on a new path that has led us on the path to generative leadership. They asked the question, what is action? And my reaction was, I don't know if I can pass this quiz because I didn't read that chapter last night. But I stopped, I took a breath and say, I'm in action. I'm doing some leading here. And I could probably make up a good story. And that was my first aware encounter of my blindness. But not just my blindness, the blindness of our culture, the blindness of my company, that I knew that everyone else in that workshop probably had a similar reaction to the question. They could make up an answer, but that what I saw was we didn't really know in a clear, operational, shared sense what action is. And now I began to understand the problems my company was having. And so in our exploration of leadership and blindness, what we have learned in our over 40 years now, we have identified many blind spots where people are put in leadership positions and they have not been taught what they need to know. Innovators trying to innovate, and they don't pay attention to the right things. So I'm going to share with you 6 key blind spots we have learned that are part of the leadership journey where people need to have new generative interpretations. The first one is this question, what is action? And I want to also really appreciate using the question, what is it, rather than how to do it. We are a very action-oriented culture in the West. And the question people usually ask is, well, how do I do leadership? How do I do innovation? But it's the wrong place to start. We found you have to ask, what are you dealing with? And what is it? Or if you don't have your what's clear, you can make up answers to how that are misleading. So we're going to explore what is action today from a new perspective. And we're going to see that all results are connected to prior conversations. That's one of our generative discoveries. We also found that there were blind spots around learning. So many people think learning is conceptual learning, that you have learned if you understand something. But we're going to go and see that leadership is a performance art. We need embodied learning, learning in action, learning to act. And one of the questions from approaching your history of learning is, we see here someone making something, a form of leadership with this clay. What is the interpretation you or the people you work with live in? Are you the clay? Are you being shaped by the world and by life? Or are you the hands? Can you take the role of shaping the clay of the future, possibility, and life? We also discovered a blind spot in choice. And one of the most prominent, pervasive issues in organizational life and a barrier to innovation is the mood of resignation. Resignation is an orientation, it's an emotion, but it's based on a story. I don't know what to do, or I can't take action to make something happen. And we've got to be able to find choice where we're stopped by that perspective. We need to illuminate. We need to go from not being able to see to seeing what our choices are. Another what question is, what is a human being? Now, your reaction may be what I expected when I first started asking this question many years ago, that people would say, oh, this is abstract, irrelevant. Let's get to the action stuff, the real stuff. But this may be our most important question, because leadership and innovation has to do with human beings. Do you know what a human being is? I know you have an answer. When we go out to companies, the answer they have is human resources. I beg to differ. I'm not a human resource. And I think that's a poor frame. And so we're going to see that what makes us, what most fundamentally makes us human is that we care about the future. It's not just the future, and it's not just action. It's meaning for us. And we're going to say more about that in a bit here. We also found that a blind spot in the world of leadership was having an answer to the question, what is a good life? When we ask this question in our leadership development efforts in companies and in our programs, most people don't have a ready answer. Most people are the hamster in the wheel. I just need to do more or do better. But if we're not taking action for a good life, if we're not innovating for a good life for ourselves and others, for those we serve, what is it we're doing? And that's a place of, I think, useful reflection. And finally, we have found in the world of leadership that the way our culture educates us and educates our children tends to make us solo artists. We get homework, we get tasks, we work hard. In fact, we learn the lesson of working hard, maybe too much, but we don't know how to connect. We don't know how to build teams. We don't know how to be communities. And so with these blind spots, what do we do with blind spots? How are we going to approach the blindness that needs to be illuminated? We need new eyes. And we call being someone who can see in a certain way, we call that being an observer. And everybody's a different observer, and professions are different observers. So a physician literally can look at bodies and sees a different body than I do. I'm not trained to be the observer. If I go into a kitchen, if you're a chef, you're trained to be an observer of the world of cooking. When I go into the kitchen, the only thing I can recognize is a can opener. But we need to be a new observer in order to take new action. And action produces results. What we have found on our leadership journey is that being a new observer is not enough. And that's often what we're taught in conceptual learning. We get the new idea, or even if you innovate, you have the new possibility of the innovation, but people need to become new actors. And leadership is a place we need the eyes of the leader. We need to see the world through the concerns of leadership and have the body that can make those moves. Now, how do we observe leadership? How can we learn to see what leadership is all about? If we observe leadership, what we will see is people interacting with people. And as a result of that, action is taken that produces results. That may sound obvious, but it's showing us where we need to put our attention. If leaders want to produce new results, they have to change those interactions in order to get new action and new results. So those interactions are where we need to put our attention. And so we bring our questions of what are we dealing with here? And the first question is, what is leadership? What are the interactions? What is action? That's not an irrelevant question. We're going to show you that with these new perspectives, we could be blind to what action really is and where it comes from. And we found that we even need to ask this question, what is a human being? Or we're really not having the eyes to see the world of leadership. And so with these questions, we're looking for a particular kind of answer. We're looking for an answer that we call generative. And what does that mean? We want answers that are showing us actions to take, not just concepts to understand. Actions that we can see, that we can do, that we can learn, and that produce the desired results. That's why we call it generative leadership, because We're not just dealing with a leadership model or theory. We're talking about actions, skills of a performance art. When we do that, we are looking for the structure. And here is a picture of DNA. DNA is the foundation of all life biologically on this planet, and it is composed of only 4 components. These 4 components come together and produce living things in all its variety, including us. And so DNA is an inspiration for looking for the fundamental structure that allows you to create, to open the world of leadership and the world of innovation, to create what's new with a fundamental structure. So everybody take a deep breath. And here I'm going to ask you to open. You may be in the story and thinking, but I really want you to be open at this point to what's happening here in the conversation. And we're going to open up for Q&A a bit later. Here's the common sense of our culture. We take action and we get results. Everybody pretty much understands that. Now, just to point out that this is a perspective, one that enables us and also limits us, if we go back several hundred years in Western culture, results weren't necessarily always thought of as coming from the actions of human beings. It was all the will of God. And now with our history of science and technology and mechanism, we're very much in this story of action produces results. But we're looking at the human dimension. And the breakthrough here, the new perspective that I'm going to ask you to test in your own experience is the relationship that we'll say is that what it is in you or any human being that leads to your action is your commitment. Not just formal commitment, but the commitment to be in your comfort zone, or the commitment to be in your habit, or the commitment to. So if you think of someone coming to work and watch their behavior as a reflection of their commitment, you can see people who are diligent and maybe overwork, and other people who are much less. Different commitments. And where does commitment come from? If commitment is what produces action, where does it come from? It comes from conversations. This is the new paradigm, the new perspective that I've been working with for over 40 years with my colleagues, with thousands and thousands of students and clients. And we've never had an example where this wasn't the case. There's an extraordinary result from this decades of experience and testing this, that all results come from conversations. The conversations can be ones that you have and don't have, that you do well and you do poorly. And the results are ones that you find valuable or not valuable. And so this is the new lens of generative leadership, is to look at the conversations you're in, both with yourself and others. And that's what drives action. That's what produces coordination, commitment, shared commitment, action for positive results, or it doesn't, because our conversations can be done well or poorly. And so there's one more element to this anatomy of action. And I like the word anatomy because these are aspects of our human action, of our human experience. Anatomy is involved. It's biological. And there's one more element that we discovered in our journey of working with leaders, that it's not simply commitment, but it's also the state of care. And care here is an internal state. In fact, something extraordinary here is being revealed. Not only that all results come from prior conversations, but those conversations are what shape internal states of commitment and care that then shape the conversation, arise in the conversation, and that internal state is what shapes the action and shapes the result. Now, care is, I'm going to ask Marta to describe whether the word care comes across in Portuguese. In Spanish, they don't have a corresponding word that means the same thing, so we have to explain what care is. It's an emotional state, but it's the fundamental state of any human being facing their life, facing their future. When you look at living your life, your choices, your future, there's futures you want and futures you don't want. And there's emotions connected to those orientations. And what's underneath all those emotions is the emotion of care. Marta, can you help
Okay, I'll do
articulate
that. I'll try to do that.
what care is for the group?
Oi, pessoal. Eu vou falar em português. Assim como o Bob falou, care é isso que nos traz vitalidade, é isso que conecta com essa força vital e que nos impulsa a ação. E por que a gente não consegue uma tradução tão boa para essa palavra que é o care? Porque em inglês ela é um substantivo, mas ela também é um verbo. To care é cuidar. E care é isso que nos importa. Então, quando a gente fez a tradução, tanto para o espanhol quanto para o português, o que a gente procurou é conservar esse sentido. Então, a gente fala do care como isso que nos importa. E o take care, cuidando daquilo que nos importa. Então, a gente não vai tirar a palavra care, embora ela não exista no nosso dicionário comum e corrente, mas na nossa linguagem generativa, a gente mantém ela conectando com aquilo que nos importa, que tem a ver com o nosso mais profundo sentimento de vitalidade, de força, de conexão. É isso. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Super. So, let me ask you to take a deep breath and really open to this perspective. Because where commitment is the energy for action, the care is where the energy comes from, the meaning comes from. And leadership is not simply being a smart person that can do things or give directions. Leaders need to bring presence, connection, relationship with the future, and we need to own what we're doing. And this is important for leadership, and it's important because people need to go through these experiences in the process of innovation. If you produce an innovation people don't care about, they won't use it. They won't buy it. They won't value it. And so let me continue this revelation of care. What we've discovered in our 40 years is that care is fundamental. Every emotion we experience has care included with it. So, for example, if you're sad, sad is an emotion that's associated with losing something. You have a loss. And if you didn't care about that, you wouldn't be sad. So care is there. If you're angry, anger is an emotion that is triggered to defend, to take care of something that's at risk. And if you didn't care about it, you wouldn't get angry. But it's also fundamental to value. If someone says, here's something that's really valuable, and you don't care about it, it's not valuable to you. The example I give is, how much value does a $25 million yacht have? And for me, it has zero value, because I not only don't have $25 million, if I did, I wouldn't use it for a yacht. So value is rooted in care. And your innovations need to produce the assessment of value, or people will not take action to use your innovation. And that is based on what they care about. Satisfaction. If someone says, here's a result that's really satisfying, and you don't care about it, you won't be satisfied. You won't experience satisfaction. And meaning, if someone says this outcome is meaningful and you don't care about it, you won't have meaning. And so this is one of our deep discoveries of being human and being in life, is that these inner states of care, of commitment, sharing them and using them in conversations is what shapes the world of action and value. And so this is the observer of leadership that leads us to be able to produce value in our leadership, with our teams and our innovations, and to coordinate action. We found, as we explored these conversations and the performance art of leadership, that we had to pay attention to things more than concepts or understanding. We had to pay attention to the self, where here the S stands for somatics. Somatics and body. Somatics is a word that means mind and body together. The E in self refers to emotions and moods, that we have a body, and emotions and moods are always with us. L stands for language. We live in stories. We have conversations. We take action in conversations. And these three are a coherent whole. If you change your body, you will see a change of the experience of emotions, and you will have a different story about it. If you change your story, you can change the emotions and the body, or you can shift emotions. They go together as a coherent whole. When you observe yourself or others, or just listen in a conversation, you can listen these dimensions. The P refers to practices, because the way we became, the pattern of our somatics, emotions, and stories comes from a history of practice. And so this is how we begin to see elements that we've been blind to in being human. And these, a very important discovery of leadership and generative leadership, is that most people have the relationship with their bodies that they put up with it. The body reacts and we say, that's me. We can learn how to respond to our body, to shape our body, particularly in those leadership moments where we have to face challenge, where we have to enter breakdowns. Emotions, people think that the emotions just happen to them. Actually, we can learn to shape our emotions and choose our emotions. We can learn to choose our stories. Another aspect of these conversations that we found are essential to pay attention to is that some of our conversations are about results in the world, that external world that we're trying to make happen. We can even talk about innovations that way. We want something to happen out there in the world. But in organizational life, in team life, in shared life, results always come from how we work together. That's why we have teams, to make bigger promises than we can make alone. We have to learn how to have people work together to make impact in the world. But if we're going to be effective in that dimension of we and how we work together, we found there's a lot of learning that we need to learn in what we call the me. And so when we're looking at results in the world and we want to build a team that's going to be able to produce it, or open a conversation about results in the world with people that we want to accept our innovation, we have to be able to know how to deal with the we conversations and bring ourselves in an effective way. And so this is the path of learning that we have found in generative leadership. to go from the world to we to me. And when you build new skills, the new observer, the new actor, the new practices, then you can come back to the we space to make your offers in the world and produce a difference in that world. And so what we found in our leadership development, for example, is people usually come to the conversation because they have a fire going on in their life. They have a problem and they want help with their problem. And what we have learned to show them is that there actually is a discipline where you can zoom out, see the big picture, and come back in with action as a leader with these new conversations that are going to deal with that problem. Because we can do that in a wide context, not just with specific techniques, this is the foundation of a profession that enables people to build a career as a professional in leadership, coaching leadership, and as we'll see, informs innovation. But we're putting at the foundation something that's left out of most of the stories of leadership, the good life, based on being human. And we found when we go all the way down, it's possible to then use those skills to really go to the world and create a new world, to be leaders and innovators that are going to create a new future. So this journey of the leader, I want to share with you here, is a somatic one. And the logo for the Institute, we use this image to represent your center. The center means your place of choice, but it lives in your body. And if you're triggered in reaction, you're off center. You can't choose where you're going. So the journey of the leader is to find your center. But the leader also needs to find their ground. Where do they stand? What do they stand for? What is this all about? And finally, they need to learn how to take that commitment from their center, that vision, that innovation, and take it to the world. Take it into the fire. Take it to the edge. Take it into the unknown. And so with that, I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions to interact with before I move on to show how this informs and empowers the processes of innovation. So Marta, do we have any questions that we can take on at this point?
Perguntas? Pessoal, quem quiser fazer pergunta para o Bob, pode vir aqui na frente para ele ver vocês. Ou então, diretamente, fazer em inglês, ou então, se faz em português, a gente traduz para ele. Se não tiverem perguntas agora, ele vai seguir na questão da inovação e depois a gente pode ver se tem ainda um tempo no final. Dou-lhe uma. Dou-lhe duas. Bob, they're a little bit shy. So maybe you can go further to innovation to see if anything changed.
Maybe we'll spark them up with innovation.
Exactly.
And, the chance to speak up and share your questions, that's also a leadership exercise. So I invite you to do that. I'm going to show how this generative perspective is fundamental to innovation. I'm going to draw from the work we did in the Innovator's Way and how they are related. What we found when we did our research for the Innovator's Way, we found studies that said only 4% of innovation projects in organizations met their financial objectives. That's a pretty bad success rate. We found that only 0.2% of patents were ever commercialized, and that less than 25% of new innovations were put into effective work. We considered those low success rates. And so when we started our study of innovation, we said, what are the factors that lead to these low levels of success and what would elevate them? And we studied not only the breakdown situations, we also studied successful innovators. In fact, there are people who are serial innovators who do it over and over and over again. We wanted to find what made them successful. What was the pattern of effective innovation? One of the first discoveries we made in our journey with innovation is people often are confusing invention, which is creating something new, with innovation, which we took to be getting people to use something new. The fact you come up with something new and you think it's wonderful, that's an invention. Innovation is people using the invention and changing their behaviors to use it, all the way from simple purchasing patterns to new apps on their smartphone, or changing the entire system that a company is using in its processes, or changing the culture of an organization or community. So what is innovation from this point of view? And the generative perspective, the generative interpretation that we came up with is innovation, first of all, is adoption. It's the adoption of something new that's incorporated into habits, processes, routines, the way people see. It's the first step to that new observer and actor that the customer has to become in order to use an innovation. What's adopted? New practices, new ways of moving, new ways of observing, interpreting, and taking action as a result. And this always happens in some kind of community where the innovation, the new practices have to be shared. This overlaps with what leadership is about in organizations, but it also is what we want to see in the usage pattern of a new innovation. And this is why leadership is one of the fundamental skills supporting innovation. So when we looked at innovation and did our research, we were able to break it into 8 core practices. And these practices are ones that are conversational, that are human. 1 are the practices of invention, 2 are the practices of adoption, and 3 are the practices of what are the basic skills that enable these other steps in the process to be successful. First is what we call sensing. Sensing is being able to tell that something is missing or possible. And people in our culture today tend not to be very good in this phase. They're too busy. They're too tired. They're too distracted. And often when you speak up and say there's a possibility for something new inside this world, they will argue with you and say they want to stay with what they already know. And so the innovator has to sense the possibility. And part of that skill is being able to, one of our sources, as Dr. Fernando Flores called these sensing disharmonies. Something's off, and you don't know what the innovation is yet, but you hang on to the disharmony. That's a skill. And there are conversations that support this. In the book, we lay out many conversations for enabling sensing. The second step, it's part of the invention, is the visualization, is actually seeing the possibility and beginning to work on a specific version of the innovation. It can be a prototypes, but you begin to make something happen. It goes from sensing something out in the world to the possibility itself. Then it has to be offered. You need to take it to the world. Remember, we're going for adoption. Then you've got to learn to make offers. And in this process, which we share with many people in our past. We've encountered people who are really committed to producing innovation in the world, and they don't make an offer. They have their invention and they have whatever conversations they have, but they haven't learned the skill of making a valuable offer, how to listen for the care, how to really connect the dots. And when you make the offer, let me stay with offer. Sometimes it's difficult to even get the conversation in which you can make the offer. So there are 3 steps of adoption, and each one is a conversation. How do you get yourself in front of people so that you can make your offer? How do you lead to adoption, which is the first action, which is they will try it out. They will do a prototype. They'll see how it works. I just loaded a new app on my phone today. I want to see how it works and see if I'm going to adopt it and make it part of my practices or not. And then once they're willing to try it and it produces value, there's a huge challenge in the innovation process that it has to be made sustainable. It has to fit with all the other practices that were already going on. It has to be digestible in the changes that are required for people to use the new, and it needs to be embedded in new standards. And what happens in this path is often you'll find resistance. We talk a lot about resistance and how it's overcome. The resistance because it's difficult to learn, it's uncomfortable, or that it can even put people's roles and identities at stake because they were successful with the old practices. Now, the skills to be able to move in these 5 steps of all the way from sensing to visualization, offering, adopting, and sustaining, we found that what we had learned in the leadership domain was just as important in the innovation domain. You've got to be able to produce execution of action, of moving things forward in groups. And so these are conversations. What are the action conversations? We found that leadership, where leadership are the conversations of producing that shared background, that shared care, that shared commitment before you even get to coordination of action, was a necessary part of not only moving the innovation project forward, but moving forward with the client who's testing out the innovation. And then this is a blind spot, huge blind spot, which we addressed with the SELPH, which is you have to be able to embody these skills, and that many people don't see learning this way. For example, when we teach people how to present yourself and tell a story about yourself, you have to have a body that can not only tell the story, but who shows up as trustworthy to the audience. And so there is a somatic level of learning. And these are the 8 practices we have found that are unavoidable. They're always there when it succeeds, and your breakdowns can be located in one of these 8 practices. So here is a slide. If you use your camera and click on the pattern down there in the corner, we will send you a handout of this diagram, and you'll be able to begin to play with that. And here is the book, The Innovator's Way. It's published in 2010, so it's getting harder to find copies. But I'll go back here to the diagram, and that's where generative leadership and generative innovation overlap. It's in the conversations. It's in the conversations of the innovator, the conversations of the innovating organization, and the conversations of the customers. You can't avoid them. And so sometimes if you come up with something, an invention that's really exciting, that seems to have enough energy to push things forward. But most innovations, and we have a lot of examples in our book, were not that easy. It took leadership. It took teamwork. It took the skills to make offers and be declined. And those are the human skills, the fundamental skills that are fundamental to leadership, innovation, and being a generative human being. A human being that's creating the future with others in an effective way. So let me go here in case that's a different pattern for you to take a picture of. Let me open for questions, comments. How'd this land for you? What have I provoked for you? And we not only have the Innovators Way as part of the work we do. Currently, we have a global organization of the Institute for Generative Leadership working as in a consulting capacity with organizations in the United States. Maribell's organization covers all of Latin America, where we just opened a new institute in the UK, and we have one in India, and we're looking at Australasia as well. So, Marta, have we provoked a conversation? Let's have a conversation. Let's create a future.
Let's see, Bob, if they are not shy anymore. So I think that Edson can have the first questions to warm it up a little bit. Hold on, Bob. We have one volunteer.
Ele me enxerga aqui? Tu quer falar inglês? Pode ser. Ele me enxerga aqui. Hi, Bob. I'm Kelly, and I missed the opportunity to ask you in the first place, but I'm going to ask you anyway. When you mention care, what's the relation between care and purpose? Because it seems to me very close. So I want to hear from you.
Very good. So purpose, first of all, we need to look at, I love your question. But when we have questions like that, we need to look, first of all, at these are words and what do they mean? And everybody has a different listening for every word. So let's all take a deep breath and say, what is purpose for me? What is care for me? And I'll share the story to see if you can not only answer your question. Purpose is a word that's used by most people to say that I have a connection to meaning, that my life path, my world of action is connected to meaning, which we call purpose, that this helps me choose how I'm going to produce outcomes that are meaningful for me. And it's an action-oriented interpretation of how it is that we orient action connected to our meaning. But where does the meaning come from? It arises from care. And so we can still have a blind spot if we have one distinction but not the other. So if we are someone who has a big heart and feels care about things in the world, but doesn't move it to action, they won't have purpose. They'll just have reactions. The version of care that connects to purpose is not the emotional experience of care. It's the commitment that arises from care that leads you to action that we would call taking care. And so these are useful ways to begin to look at what am I going to choose in my life, and what is it that produces this value, satisfaction, and meaning for me and others. And these are skills of listening, not only to the care and the purpose in me, but the care and purpose in those people I serve. How does that land? Maribell, you want to say anything there? She's kind of the maestra of purpose in our group.
It sounds good. It sounds good
Thank
to
you,
me.
Bob. I also would like to add to what Bob is saying that when we talk about purpose, it's also important that we see what is the context from the one we are looking for our purpose. There are a lot of methodologies, a lot of ways that we can find the purpose and that we can decide and define what is our purpose. But what I love the most about what Bob is saying is that purpose and care are connected with our emotion, with our meaning, with the value that we are creating, and with the satisfaction that we are creating for us and for the people who are around in your lives. For me, I've been, as Bob was saying, I've been in a quest for purpose for 15 years, and I have seen a lot of different methodologies, and definitely in this moment, for me, my purpose and my are really connected. They are just one. So the most important part about purpose and care is that you feel them in your body, that are not just words or beautiful sentences in a wall or in a handbook, but they are the way you see your life and the emotions and feelings and intentions and concerns that focus and give you action to take care in the future.
Perfect. Thank you. So we have more question there. We didn't. Let's go back. What's your next? What did that provoke?
Hi. So if I understood well, you mean going even deeper, purpose, yes, and even deeper, and then you catch your emotions and other things that moves you. Is that right?
Here's the way that I would take it. What is deepest is the care that resonates in your heart and soul. When you go inside and say, what makes me alive? What makes my life worthwhile? That's your deepest care. But when you connect to that and you use that energy to say, I'm going to take that to the world, that's through the path of purpose. That's through taking care. And people struggle with these steps of exploration because, first of all, in our culture, people don't ask you what you care about. And yet we found that care and shared care is fundamental to teamwork, organizational culture. It's the GPS for moving to value, satisfaction, and meaning. And so we found that when we introduce this in the process for leaders, people will take, almost nobody is clear at the beginning. So if you're sitting here saying, well, what's my answer? That's normal. People will take months, 6 months, a year is not uncommon because we have not been supported by our culture to face these questions and empower ourselves with these choices to choose what's meaningful for me, what's meaningful in my life, because we get trapped by the excitement of success, to be busy and get goodies, but that doesn't lead to profound, powerful leadership. Leaders need to lead from a deep commitment and a deep care that other people can share. And when you take it to innovation, if you don't listen the care of the customers, you're going to have a lot of stories about why you're not succeeding. So how are we doing?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. For everybody.
Alguém tem mais uma pergunta? No? Inglês. Any question, please? So I will ask you, Bob. Yesterday I was here with Jeff Towson, and with Asia Strategy, Digital Asia Strategy. He talked a lot of things interesting. And I was impressed with one concept is about the 3-2-1. That is a goal that the Chinese companies is looking for. What is 3-2-1? 3 minutes to approval, 1 minute to decision. No, sorry, 3 minutes to application, 1 minute to approval, and 0 human interface. So I was impressed with this, no? And I would like to ask you, how and where is the conversation in this contest that people are talking about agile and fast things? Tell us, I would like to listen about what's your opinion about this conversation in a contest about you need to decide fast everything.
Okay.
I don't know if you understood what I speak. Okay, so the question is, how is the conversation in the contest that everybody's working to doing fast in and working with agile, everything?
Yes. So let me see if I was able to the sound is a little difficult, but let me see. I think I got the gist of the question. So when people are busy with tasks, this is a very common condition in organizations and very common that we find in leaders and people trying to make a difference in the world. They get very, very good at being solo performers. They are solo actors. And they find themselves blocked. They find themselves limited. And the common experience of people who live in the world of tasks is they overcommit because they think the road to success is working hard and doing a lot. And they sacrifice. It doesn't include care and commitment. It's about the external task. And that is a symptom of the context of our culture. The context of our culture, the Western culture today, is dominated by the mechanical view of action. You want results, you do the actions, and don't worry about being a human being. Just become a machine to produce. Just become an ATM for results. And then people work hard. And the huge breakdowns that we see there is people overcommit. They get burned out. They don't know how to ask for help. They don't make big promises because you can only fulfill small ones alone. And they don't harness this incredible potential for innovation by listening to the world of possibilities and being in conversation and then inventing how to go into the future, a new future in a new way. And we need, in both leadership and innovation, we need to help people get back to their humanity, because that's where this incredible power for creation exists, and it's been limited by this mechanical metaphor of being a unit of production to produce things. I've been in programs that I've worked with people that have spent months and months and months trying to figure out what would be valuable for them. And I did an exercise with a group. I said, I think it's inside you. You have 2 minutes, share with the person next to you. And everybody reported it was. When I really look and don't go to my head to figure it out, when I really look at what's there, there's something that speaks that is hugely valuable. But this is when you honor yourself as a being, a human being, that has a future and a voice, and rather than figuring out in our head to get the right answer. Edson, did I address your question?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Fortunately, we have more 2 questions. Let's do conversation.
Bob, we have a question from Luciana, and she wrote me in the chat, so I'll translate. Okay. She's asking, feeling, sensing is an ability that we forgot, and you open the 8 practices and include innovation and leadership that is about human beings, and we have a system operating millions of years ago, from many years, in the feeling, in the sensing. Do you suggest any practice to rescue and to nurture this ability to sense, to feeling? If so, what would be and how?
Beautiful, beautiful. It's a beautiful. I love the question, because questions open up a portal to a new view, a way to move into the future in a new way. The breakdown that we have experienced in our work is that people, again, have tended to be educated to a view of themselves and action where it's mental, it's figuring things out, and then using the body to get things done. And we aren't taught the practices, and most of us don't cultivate the practices of sensing, of slowing down, of feeling what's going on, of letting our body speak to us, of listening to the whispers of our heart and soul that's trying to be heard, but we're too busy. And so these are our skills and practices. In the book, we actually lay out questions, because you look with different eyes with questions like, what's missing? Where are people dissatisfied? The dissatisfaction turns out to be a mine of gold, that if you look at your dissatisfaction and the dissatisfactions of others, then you will find missing action, missing possibility to create. And when people are in their habits, in their routines, and they don't see, they've accepted things are normal, the skill is to say, with new eyes, where is there waste? Where could we imagine things being different? Instead of accepting all the steps that may be wasteful, what if we could imagine going to the outcome and feeling full satisfaction, value, and meaning? This is not only for an innovation as a product or service, but for a good life. Where do you feel dissatisfaction? Not think it, but feel it. Do you even feel in the body is actually a relevant question in our culture today. We're not trained to be friends with our body. And so those are aspects of the steps. And when I go back to what I showed in the leadership, that we have choices we didn't know we had about our relationship with our body and our emotions and our stories, this can really open up to see the world with new eyes and begin to not simply think of new possibilities, but a full body sensing of it. And the place that many people stop is it needs to be clear. I need to figure it out. I need to know what it is. And part of the skill is staying with the sensations when we don't know what to do with them yet. That's one of the fundamental skills of the deep innovators, is they stay with the perplexity and don't go off into, well, I'm busy. I need to, get to my task list. And so we need to have practices to have time to stop, to pause, to listen. Most people don't know how to do that, but we can learn. How are we doing with time?
Thank you, Bob. Bob, we had a last question, but it's one of your students, Rick, so he can address it to you later.
Okay.
So to take care of the time of everything and everyone, we are going to close the session. And I would ask you, can I close in Portuguese?
What's that?
Can I close it in Portuguese?
Oh, please. I love hearing that music.
Ok. Eu estou muito feliz de estar aqui hoje. Quando eu conheci o Bob em 2019, ele me fez essa pergunta, what do you care about? Eu disse, não tenho a menor ideia. Deu um branco total radiante. E eu me dei conta que eu fui treinada, ou seja, eu tenho uma prática muito grande, muito extensiva, muito incorporada de fazer muitas coisas, gerar muitas ações, gerar muitos resultados, deixar meus clientes bem satisfeitos. E eu estava completamente perdida. E ele me fez essa pergunta e se abriu um buraco embaixo de mim. Eu disse, ai, meu Deus, e agora? Vou ter que ficar do lado desse fofo desse Bob por um tempo para aprender isso. E eu conheci a Maribell nesse caminho. Pode botar a Maribell ali também? E a Maribell, um dia, ela conversando comigo, ela fechou os olhos e eu via que ela estava vendo algo. E ela disse, Marta, meu care é fazer parte de uma nova cultura de liderança para a América Latina. E eu quero formar uma legião de coaches e consultores para atuar nas organizações. Para que a gente possa ter lugares onde a gente possa exercer a nossa liberdade e a nossa felicidade. Eu fechei os olhos e eu vi isso junto com ela. E um dia eu prometi para ela, eu vou levar isso para o Brasil em português. Eu estou toda arrepiada. Eu não estou sozinha, porque eu quero aprender a não fazer mais as coisas sozinha, porque além de chato, é bem pouco divertido. Então a gente está fazendo um movimento. E esse movimento está começando junto assim com a nossa entrada no Caldeira. E esse movimento tem as gurias, vocês já viram, né? Toda mulher gosta de uma blusinha, um vestido, a gente resolveu fazer. Mas tem também um guri. E eu quero chamar a Ana, a Tita, o Matsuo, porque tem algo que nos une. Não é uma empresa, não é um CNPJ. É um compromisso, é um care. De fazer com que essa metodologia, com que essa força desse discurso chegue em mais e mais e mais pessoas. A gente sabe que isso aqui é um ecossistema de empresas que querem gerar resultados para satisfazer clientes e prosperar. E a gente quer acompanhar de mão dada para que isso aconteça de uma forma humana. E a gente está aqui. É isso que a gente tem para oferecer, porque é o que a gente se importa. E a gente está aqui. A gente quer conversar. Tudo, o Bob fala, né? It's all about conversations. É tudo sobre a próxima conversa possível. E ela está disponível para nós. Então, eu queria agradecer ao Matsuo, que foi convidado para fazer um speech durante a Semana Caldeira, e ele abriu espaço para trazer o que ele está aprendendo. Isso é uma coisa sensacional. E a gente veio junto. A gente veio para trazer a liderança generativa. E a gente vai seguir conversando, porque é isso que a gente sabe fazer. Muito obrigada. Muito obrigada. Obrigada.
Não. Oi. Oi. Agradeço aí esse momento. E a gente deixou aqui um QR Code para a gente começar uma conversa. Então, das informações. Falamos tanto de conversas e eu acredito que o digital é uma tecnologia, mas a postura digital é uma interação. Se não há trocas, não é cultura digital. Então, dentro desse contexto, agradeço a todos que ficaram até agora e vamos seguir. Esse é o convite para a gente ir co-criando. Obrigado, hein?
Vai ainda? A gente não está vendo ele.
Não, a gente está vendo no coração.
Não?
Bob.
Hi, Bob. We would like to thank you so much for the time and for all your wisdom and to take care of the discourse in the world. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep enjoying the whole week.
Bye, Mari.
Bye. Keep enjoying the week and celebrate the innovation and the future of Brazil in our name.
Go Latin America.
Go Latin America. Love you.
Onward.